Okay, so good morning everyone. How are you feeling?
Awesome.
I see that there are
Awesome all balls.
pardon, John?
Fine.
There are a couple of people missing, and by the who it might be that's missing, they probably will be here perhaps a little bit later because I think they went out dancing. No prizes to guess who those people are. So, talking of dancing, has anybody used dancing in their change processes or change projects ever? Yes, great.
There's actually an icebreaker with dancing.
Yeah,
Yes, I use
Seriously.
icebreakers and get people jumping around the room.
yeah. It's quite amazing how it changes the dynamics and gets people out of their comfort zone to a large degree.
Will you do that?
Yeah. I
use
actually-
it as a metaphor as well. Metaphor for good.
Yes.
I'm a karaoke producer, and I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
Far East is full of singing and family gatherings. So
Yeah.
without singing, the gathering or the lunch or dinner is not complete.
Yeah.
And I have adopted it from Far East, Japan, Korea, all these.
Okay. Lovely.
And it's a therapy which I cannot tell you how fantastic it is. I'll present one to all of you. If you really want to sing, that's the question, you know.
It's for the next conference. Come to
Before that,
Paris.
I can send it by DHL to all of you guys.
Okay.
And I've got around 20,000 songs in English songs, which I can put French, German to make you feel more.
Amazing. Thank you. That's wonderful. All right. Excellent.
Very kind, but just at the moment, it wouldn't help.
Are we going to dance?
Well, I can sing
No, we
you-
did dance last night.
Okay.
You see, that was quite amazing.
That's great.
It was really fun, and thank you everyone, because everyone who was left in the room by then did actually get up and dance, and I thought that was amazing. Well, they did because I forced them a little bit, but
A little bit.
they did. Right, so I'd just like you to take 5 minutes to centre yourselves a little bit and write down on a post-it, there's still plenty of post-its, your thoughts of yesterday. Thoughts, feedback, and if you could post them on the whiteboard behind the camera over there, that would be fantastic. And just, apologies to those who used that very ineffective glass board yesterday, but I've put some new sheets about Paris for the ideas, the help and the presentations. So if you have any ideas or you'd like to present or help, please, could you also do that? You can do that during the day, during the morning. But if, for the moment, if you could put your post-it notes on over there, 5 minutes, we'll get going.
I will go and get some. But
Paper towels.
are you going to?
Sorry.
Yeah, the best thing is this newspaper. If nobody is using it, you can put it here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Newspaper's good. Yeah. Yeah, newspaper's good.
Sorry, I'll do this. So.
phone survive to it?
It should be okay.
Okay.
Now you need guiding ink on. So
It's okay.
You do that with
They need
water.
to- They just need to
Yeah.
take some other stuff too.
I'll sit here because I did the mess.
That's fine. No, you won't get it off. You can't, no, you need
Yeah,
other.
I'll put
You need
They'll
chemical,
need
you
it later,
need-
they'll people say.
Yeah, they've got a spray.
I worked at
Very good, isn't it?
I was 10 years old.
It's like, no.
Let me sit here.
I knew the tricks.
No, it's
Doesn't matter, it's water.
You know what will clean it? If you have an aftershave. Yes, it will clean up.
Oh, cool.
Or if you have Coke or 7
There's a cup here as well.
boom.
So how many CCCs, TCLs does it take to clean a table?
The cleaners will do it.
Clean.
Yeah. Don't worry, the cleaners will do it. Okay. Is everybody,
Did everyone write something on their post-it? Because that's important.
I will be take forever doing it.
Return the dates on.
We're working on an action like this year.
The thing we show after the show, all the mistakes.
Oh, that's, yes, the outtake.
Oh no!
no, it's fine, I've got loads. I just,
Sorry.
right. Okay. Are you writing comments, daughter, or are you writing a book?
It's a new book.
I'm
If-
reflecting.
Okay.
I thought that was the point of it.
Yes.
Another book, huh?
Thank you so much. And now, over to Rick.
Thank you, and lovely to be back together with you again. Really enjoyable time yesterday afternoon, and then the after party yesterday was also great. A number of us found ourselves in the club room after 5, and the conversation turned to the change leaders, and so really thank you so much. Before I say anything more, just you. There is something I want to say, but the words are, and I just quoted back to her some words out of her mouth.
Yeah, this is 100% true. We had a long conversation yesterday before dinner, and we just picked some things I said and told me I wanted to say again. So what I said that was really valuable. Among 1 hour, it was 1 second valuable. So that's the beginning of it. I said that I would like out of this session and generally that the member feel some ownership about the change leaders. That each of us think it's my thing, I own it. Just like, maybe some of you know the theories of the commons, but it's conceptual anyway. But because to go back to history, cohort 1 was this way because they created the change leaders, and some of the early cohorts also felt this way. But now we all of us here like this organization, but the ownership feeling is maybe less important, and if we have this ownership feeling, if each of us think this is my organization and I want to help decide where it goes, this is the energy we need. This is not what I said yesterday. I'm elaborating. So please, you remember better than what I said, and maybe.
It's true you are elaborating, but you're elaborating very much on the theme that you said yesterday.
So, yeah, yesterday we also discussed what were the right word to describe how we feel about this organization when we are bringing some energy inside or getting some energy from the organization. So we said family, we said fellowship, and we said ownership. So depending on your country, your language, maybe some words resonate more than others. So we had discussion about that because in each language the words are a bit different, but really ownership. So if you own this organization, where do you want it to go? How do you want it to work? What do you want it to produce for you and for others? And that's it. And I'll stop there because otherwise I'll go the whole day.
Cecile, I have a question.
Yeah.
Why do we call it change leaders? Because when we say that we are change leaders, it's a kind of a sort of a claim which is quite a
He was,
courageous claim.
he was, although we not using this word anymore, he was part of the founders. So maybe you have to answer that.
It was democratically arrived at. There were a number of names, and most people, fewer people didn't like, but fewer people didn't object to the change leaders. And also TCL is a nice logo.
And with that, if I may, I'm going to take the reins. That's okay. But certainly you and John can probe that more later. So Cecile, thank you so much for painting that picture. And with that, we will begin our kitchen table. And this time, though it's large, we really are together at a table today. And you may recall that at the beginning of our little session in the middle, I asked everybody to go around once, and in a minute I'll do the same here. And then after, and this time I'm going to take stock of the time, 10 to 10, and we'll finish precisely at 10 to 12. So we will go once around at the beginning, just to remind you of a couple of other things from yesterday. I suggested that as you set up your own dashboard for assessing the kitchen table, that 3 words to consider were pertinent. Is this really what I need to be talking about, we need to be talking about? Surprising, but surprising in a good way. Are there fresh ideas, fresh perspectives? And am I having fun? And everyone is the driver of this conversation. So if on any of those criteria on your dashboard, or any other criteria that you add on your personal dashboard, if you're not seeing what you would like to see, please dive into the conversation to help shift the conversation, to make it the conversation that you would like to experience. And the other thing I'll reprise is that notion of what is a kitchen table conversation, or a
Stammtisch.
thank you, Stammtisch, or a
Stammboard.
Stammboard, or our guys from the Spanish world, and here they tell me.
The tapas.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they had a word for it.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't matter. There's a Spanish word for the after lunch conversation that goes on till dinner. And so it's storytelling, it's heart to heart, it's bringing each other up to date, and I'll emphasize it again. At the kitchen table, we can interrupt each other and disagree with each other. In fact, we have to interrupt each other and disagree with each other in the spirit of the family table. I'd like to pick up on those things that Cecile was talking about. This is my organization, I want to help decide where it goes. But I'm also curious about what it is that made you decide that it would be your organization. So for instance, yesterday, when we were just sitting around in the club room, somebody commented about as a change leader, you don't have many peers. And so a real benefit of this organization is to be among peers. Well, what are the other benefits of this organization? And so let's start there as we explore the future and this organization. And the last thing I'll remind you of is that it was not an accident that our conversation yesterday was about the care and nurturing of ideas, because it is my expectation that some ideas will emerge in this conversation that will be worthy of care and nurture. And so it seemed that it would be worthwhile for us to have some shared ideas, some shared thoughts about the care and nurture of ideas, so that as we, towards the end of this conversation, as we see the things that we want to keep alive, that we have some shared approaches that we can use to make sure that happens. So, in this first go-round, just a little thought, and there are lots of us, so it needs to be a little thought about benefits of different trees. Yes? the curse of being to my left.
The curse of being to your left.
And I apologize, and normally I would go first to relieve you of the burden of going first, but it would be impertinent of me to go first on this one.
Okay, so benefits of the change leaders for me is it's very much a space to reflect, to learn, to play, and it really does feel like a family. It's an environment which does not have the normal limits on it. So, for example, if you work in an organisation and you get involved with employees and your fellow employees, etc., often, at least in my case, once or twice, you get ripped out of that situation, and for whatever reason, or even if you decide to take yourself away from there, and it kind of destroys a little bit. You don't have that fabric, so you lose something, and then you go somewhere else and make it again. But what's wonderful here is it's permanent. Is maybe the wrong word, but at least it's semi-permanent. But it's not dependent on other criteria or circumstances. It's dependent on us, and it's dependent on each individual. It's also dependent on me. And so, for me, that is very, very rich and very, very safe.
Beautiful, thank you. Beautiful. A benefit that you experience as a change leader?
Good things cannot be said.
Good things cannot be said.
They can only be felt.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Like Julie, I think place to learn and reflect. For me, the discipline of having Paris in spring, Oxford in fall, so you don't have to really think about, will I have time to do this reflection or this learning, or will some other work or some other commitment, will that take first place? If you're part of this group, you know that it's gonna happen, and sometimes you look very much forward to it, and you plan, and you're a part of the preparation, and other times you just arrive, and then by magic it really happens, even though you hadn't expected anything to happen. It still happens. The space kind of opens up, and you enter into this room, and then you're transported back in a time machine to when you took your CCC, and you kind of refresh that connection, and you remember what it's like to be yourself when you are really learning and developing something.
Wish would be that this is a group of people, independent how we call it, on what we started to do during CCC, having open discussions, learning, being fair to each other, accept other views, and by that really enable us to do also change for ourselves.
I came first because I didn't want the CCC to stop. And I thought that it will continue. It's a bit different, but what is magic is that you are surrounded by people. It's very diverse. Each of us come from a different country, different market, different education, different job. And then we have the same background. So you don't, when you speak about complexity, chaos, or whatever, you're among people who really understand deeply what you mean, which is not the case in the real world, the business world. Yeah, a lot of people say I'm doing change, and when you speak with them, they have absolutely no idea what you are speaking about. And quite often, and I don't want to be, how do you say that in English? I don't want to be showing up or whatever, but quite often you're facing people who are very technical about change, or very, who are very technical about change, or very, kind of engineers of change or technicians of change, and nothing like the background we have. So what I find here is inspiration from the people, inspiration from the knowledge, and continuous learning. And
thank you. I love what Julie said about reflect, learn, and play. So that is capital for me as well. It is also camaraderie and really an extension of the joy that I experienced in CCC. So that also. It's a network with peers and other change management consultants, and it's a very precious diversity. And I also like what Cécile said about, despite the cultural diversity, there is a common language which is generated up from the ground of CCC. And it's a way of keeping abreast of, because of the diversity, because of the members in different geographical locations, keeping abreast of the changes and the innovations in the consultancy change management field.
In my day-to-day work, I've got a very narrow field of change, which is primarily the media, and there's not much more outside the media that I do. So diversity is one of the advantages I find of TCL. I do have a wide focus in geographic focus in the media. We have a wide geographic focus here. So what I find is, firstly, I get a much broader view, and that helps when you want to narrow it down and focus it tighter, because you've got more depth, more aspect to it. But also we have a common, not a common way of thinking, but we have a common understanding. We have a convoc of the way we communicate, which obviously helps as well.
I was very attached to this program for the 7 years that I was co-directing it, and I learned an enormous amount, and I also, one of the main things for me was the relationships with people that were built up through this program. So one of the things I come back to, it's a bit like coming home or coming to see old friends. That's a really important part of for me of TCL. And I saw my role as, I think nurturing is a really good word, sort of planting seeds and watching them grow. And I've always been a practitioner myself, so I've always also seen myself as a peer. I think one thing that I really miss in life out there is these kinds of conversations that we have here and that we've had all along throughout CCC. I think it's such a privilege and a luxury in a way to be able to have those kinds of conversations with people that have this common ground, and that's what I come to find again here. And I respect and admire all of the people here enormously for what they're doing in their different ways, having seen them grow and flourish from going beyond CCC. And so it's lovely to see that continuing and to catch up with people's work again. And I learn an enormous amount from all of you. And that's a great joy as well.
Well, I also feel like it's coming home, and I find it also, like you said, this is a little difficult sometimes to find peers when you, in my daily work. Every time I come here I find new inspiration, get new insights, and I like the program and the conference, but I actually like the breaks better, because that's where the real stuff and the real good conversation, they happen there. So I...
We'll make it easy for the next team. Only
It would be
breaks.
very
Only
easy.
breaks.
I over the years, I've done a lot of conference sessions, and when I do a conference session, I'm given 3 hours, and of course, when you do 3 hours, there needs to be a break. And I will not announce in advance what time the break will be, and I never announce what time the break ends, because here's how I handle the break in these 3-hour conferences. And there are no guest speakers, and so I don't need to keep faith with their needs. But the break works like this: when the moment comes for the break everybody, and then I listen. And as long as the conversation is rising, the break goes on. And the second the conversation stops rising, the break is over. And the record is 45 minutes. To your point.
So anyway, very precious to me as well, and I would like more ownership, more engagement. So
this is my first TCL, so I'm a bit of a fresher. It's my freshers week. I've got a very simple aspiration need. I'm looking for a power station. So what do I mean by a power station? Well, I think there's a need to convert fossilized fuels in the form of academic into something such as energy, which is real world artifacts. And I see just a big gap between lots of great, diverse intellectual work and artifacts that can be used in a commercialized sense in the real world. So that would be my first need, aspiration.
As many have said here, I probably come for the breaks too. I come to, see people that I love and meet new people that I know I'm going to love. I use this group to take a chance and to test ideas and to experiment a bit, because the feedback I get from you is absolutely invaluable. And more than once I've tested ideas and then you take it back to a client and you think, oh, this was so easy because of the feedback I got from this group. And I love the way that it is always evolving, but really stays the same. It's welcoming and embracing, and that's fantastic for me.
It's getting difficult because I agree with everything. I think
so there's an opportunity. Forgive me, you were about to say.
Well, I mean, I do genuinely agree with everything, and I think it is that mix of learning and reflection and a safe space to play, to test things out, and it's also that sense of community, which is unique, and it's because of that shared vocabulary that we all have from a program, no matter what cohort we were in. So I can't find that anywhere else. So that's why I come back whenever I can. I can't always make it to every one, but it does have that unique place, and I see it really as personal development, which is a sound investment. I wish I could do it more.
yeah, I think for me it's, it's very similar with some of what you said. It's we all have different work life somewhere else, but from CCC to TCL, it is kind of I don't know. That's also how I feel. Whenever I talk with people here or connect, it's like we live certain life together. So sometimes I ask what's going on with this one. That it's almost like because of the connection is quite strong. Almost like I share part of the life. The other fellow is undergoing, and the other way around the same. I mean, we all have some confusions or challenges or different things in life, and then this is also a place. It's kind of some other people are carrying the same thing. And for example, yesterday I had a conversation, and it's like, of course, everybody's confused this way or that way, and it's very clear by the conversations, and that is quite empowering to life, because it's not definitely not alone, but also quite vividly not alone. The time in Oxford or in Paris, I think it's very beneficial. It's in a way, it's kind of you put it in a calendar. It's a very good discipline. You don't need to juggle like, oh, do I do this or that or that? It's like the organization help you to have a good break, and then that's something also I find very helpful.
Well, almost everything has been said, so I just want to add that for me, lifelong learning is really important, and this group enables that to happen, because we all want that. And the word family has also been mentioned, and I realized I've been a part of TCL for a long time, and I realized it's like meeting old family members somehow, so it's very special. So I enjoy both the content that some of you carefully put together, because there's lots of inspiration and trying out new things, and of course the breaks and the lovely dinners and music, and I think this combination of thorough sort of work and headspace, and then enjoying all the nice wine and good conversation, it's just really nice, very refreshing.
Really, what I can add, the benefit from one of the benefits for me, it makes me feel good to come here and be here, and why all sorts of reasons, all the things people have been saying, the stimulus, the sense of belonging, the sense of pride, I think, that this group exists at all, and I'm part of it. Other things, more practical, a real benefit for me is actually being able to take part in a process like this, and play around with practical exercises and processes. It drags me out of books. So it gets me out of books into practice. So that's a real benefit for me.
Yeah, most things sense. Maybe one thing, and then also just the practical stuff, but is strangely enough, although some people I don't know, because there are other cohorts, etc., I feel amazingly comfortable in this group. It's kind of one way or the other kicks in, so that's quite nice. And the couple of practical things that I find is, I don't think this group, we like the breaks, but what we also like, and talking about kind of being out there, experimenting, trying things out, playing, etc. And a practical thing is maybe for me is less lecture, theatre kind of stuff, but kind of pushing ourselves out there and undergoing an intervention that somebody knows about, or doing that kind of stuff, and that really kind of shakes us up. And that's some of the things that I like in terms of those type of stimuli. And the other thing, I'm not sure how that can be configured, but there are a number of people who are not part of this table, and are not who are TCL, maybe by name only, and they hardly come, and some people are not even. But what I do here is that they want the break bit. And I said, well, can we catch up on the Friday beforehand, or can we catch up just in the evening, because they just want to have the conversations. Is there a way to be able to kind of open it up even for non-members, or just invite people for a big drink or a big whatever else, and making sure that these folks come in as well.
I think it's
Go for
There's
it.
only one person left.
Go, yeah,
Just
go
let her
for it.
talk.
Katja, we will get to you, but thank you so much for taking me seriously and interrupting. Go for it.
Oh, well, no, I mean, I think it is open to a certain degree. I'm not sure about non-members, but it's certainly open to people who don't come to the conference. They can come to the evenings. Somebody did it like that.
Okay,
Come to
so,
the evenings.
forgive me, because we're such a large group, sometimes I'm going to grab the floor away so that we can keep moving, but that was a very important point. Katja.
Yep. So I'm here for the first time, and CCC was an exceptional personal and academic journey, which I think I came and joined because I wanted to continue that. I too didn't want CCC to finish. Actually, I had goosebumps when a few of you said that how strongly you felt about this community. So I'm hoping that I will become part of that journey. I very much like to contribute to it more. But I would also like to see more of our cohort. And when we graduated, we had great aspirations to continue our journey together and meet annually and invite lecturers and basically have something similar to TCL. And I'm disappointed that only so few of us made it here. And I was wondering whether that is because I think a lot of us had aspirations to continue this journey, but also to see great lecturers that we had throughout CCC, and I'm not sure whether they saw that reflected as part of the conference from our
I did
cohort.
not understand what you said.
So I remember one of our sixth module was partly or mostly led by Mary Crossan. And she was a great lecturer, and everybody really loved her, and everybody wanted to see her again. And when we had lectures with her, we thought we have to arrange something and see each other again, and arrange lectures with her independently. So I had a feeling that there was a great need for continuing the intellectual and academic journey as well.
But I just
So high profile
high profile
speakers.
I'd like just to say I am very happy you said that, because this is an ongoing idea I have had, and I'm not sure we've been discussing that very often, about who was it in the academic team you liked the most, really influenced you as a professor, a teacher during the CCC you would like to invite back. And we might have very different ideas, because I remember a discussion we had in my cohort about such or such professor that half liked, half hated, and so on. But at some stage, I think maybe we could invite from time to time some of the academics we love the most. That Raphael has been coming again and again, in which time Raphael is a hit. But there should be others we could have.
Can I just say that we tried to get Mary, but she couldn't do it, so we're still trying.
Okay. Well, we discussed it with her already.
Yeah.
And she said if she's in Paris anyway in September, she could always then try to come before or afterwards. So
I'm still trying for the next one.
I just have a comment. I would just like to say on behalf of Delphine and Julia, who is not here, that they sent a lot of love to all of us. Yeah, which is a nice thing too.
Open season. There are some questions that I'll guide us towards as we roll along. But as you've already noticed, just what you've heard so far opens up some territory for conversation.
One of the things we talked about yesterday is how to keep it going outside of the conferences. And I heard a few people kind of refer to that as well this morning, and it would be interesting for me to talk to some of the people that are interested in that and see if there's something that could be done that's kind of low maintenance and easy, but lets us connect. I think the learning, and especially being exposed to
the developments in the field is so important for all of us. It'd be nice to know what we're doing in relation to what other people, other groups are doing as well.
Building on that, I mean, there's a lot of discussion of people's practices already, but I personally would like to see a more open session where people come with things that they're doing, rather than a case study or a formal presentation, as it were, but something more, you know, I share a tool or I share an experience of something that I've just facilitated, or I don't know, open, a sort of open sharing session.
Yeah, this is what I've been doing for the last 3 months.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, or this was a striking intervention where I tried this and it worked really well because da 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 da, or even maybe a problem-solving type session. I've got this really difficult case. What do you think? That kind of exchange.
We actually discussed that yesterday, that I mean, we could easily include some open space technology in the way that we are working, that would enable us to kind of check in and saying, so what's on your mind professionally right now, and then we could group people, you know, sort the themes out, and then have a discussion of maybe 1.5 hours where we go into depth with the different themes that people are concerned about or inspired by.
You could actually do an entire conference as open space.
Yeah, definitely.
That's,
I'm sure for that.
But then again, I think you have a very important point, Katja, and I think one of the reasons why we're not more people are sitting around this particular table is that we didn't have a high-profile speaker this time. And so I think it's a valid point that maybe there's not. I think our experience is there's not a direct link between the quality of the conference and the number of high-profile speakers, but I think there's a coherence between the number of participants and the appearance of a high-profile speaker.
Steve's quite high profile.
But then it speaks to the topic, right?
Yeah.
Not that many people are engaged in his area, right? So I think it's a real, like, it's a high profile with the right topic that's going to bring people in. Can I just build on, so maybe a complete unconference wouldn't work with this group, but bringing in one high profile speaker and letting the rest of the conference revolve around the group.
And something to be aware of is that on occasion, and I don't know how these negotiations are done, on occasion a very high profile speaker can be persuaded to stick around and just participate in the conference as Steve did. And it's fun when you are just hanging out at a conference and you get to have a quick chat with one of the top folks.
And this is effectively what Mary did during our module, and that's why also all of the people loved her. She was always there, she was always open, everybody could come to her, and she always had some minutes and gave input. So that's why everybody really was over the top.
We did that with Gareth Morgan as well. We had Gareth Morgan coming in for the whole module, but just doing his piece in the beginning and the end of the module.
He still does, I guess, and he's there for a week, I guess.
Is he still at the short school?
Pardon?
Is he still at the short school?
So, but that's an interesting one. So both those names, Mary and Gareth Morgan, of course. I've never experienced them. And I go like, yes, I want to experience them.
Gareth Morgan, you had a book to read. So
I was required reading, you know. It's fantastic.
But they did not come to my court neither. And also, very important, and something else I wanted to say, some of the high-profile speakers we've had, unfortunately, don't get who we are or don't have the broad understanding of change and complexity we have. So it's very interesting to get from them. But then when they stay with us, they tend to be monomaniac about their own field. While I guess people whom I don't know, like Gareth Morgan or Mary, I don't know her name, but might be much more with the same broad
Yeah.
understanding of
At least
change
Gareth, yes,
we have.
definitely.
So that's also very difficult to find a high-profile speaker.
My perception is, my prejudice probably, that some of the most distinguished academics who are very high profile are not good at engaging with the group, not willing to. What they want to come and do is do their piece, do their performance, which may be very, very stimulating. Maybe.
So
But
maybe it's
so you have to be very careful.
Maybe it's a marketing thing. Maybe people that are looking for the high-profile speakers, maybe they need to understand more what they get out of this conference. And it's not just the high-profile speakers.
Yeah,
I don't think it's
we've
the
been
high.
trying,
Yeah,
we've been trying,
I don't think it's a high-profile speaker. So one of the things that as some bit of evidence that I thought was surprising was there was a thing here around positive deviance at a certain point. It wasn't TCL, but there was a get-together and you can kind of enroll, etc. And before you knew it, everybody wanted to get in. And also people who were not part of TCL, never showed up, etc. They go like, yes, I want to spend 1 or 2 days going deep into further positive deviance, understanding cases, etc., etc. So sometimes I think it might not necessarily have to do with the high-profile speaker, but going deep into an area. So a topic. So if there's that theme, and there might be speakers involved, or experts involved, or cases involved, or whatever else, then we could do an open space, and we can get an inspirational speaker afterwards.
I think maybe we're not just talking about high profile. Certainly what Katja was implying to me was the best or the most popular speakers in CCC, which would be high profile with our group.
Yes.
Not necessarily the great gurus, but the people who really made an impact in CCC.
But I
So
think
that
you're
would
making
be
two different points there, because I agree with you that what would also ring a bell, not just the name of the speaker, but taking some of the topics that we have been dealing with during the CCC program and going deeper. So positive deviance is one area, but for instance, the psychodynamic lens, we were introduced to that, we worked a day with that, but I think for most of us, the reality is that this is not a perspective that's so very strong in our practice. So I would personally love to dwell more into that kind of lens and get more experience there.
I was just thinking that the CCC curriculum has developed over the years, which is natural. And when I came back after a few years doing some stuff with Rachel and the positive deviance thing we do, I experienced a totally new module about complexity that we didn't do, and that was no offense or anything, but it was just the kind of development it was happening. So I really think it would be great if we, as a group, and I'm saying well, maybe it should be complexity, I don't know, but there were some really fantastic people, some a fantastic format, fantastic discussions, and so on. And why not build on some of, and maybe that relates to what you were saying, Katja, as well, but why not build on things like that and take that into this group? I think it was great.
Thank you. I know you were about to speak, and I hope you do, particularly because I hope you'll expand on your power station metaphor.
Sure, I was actually just going to build Lars's point. My point builds on this. I think there were a number of unfinished stories in CCC12. I think the first one was we did a whole plethora of psychosomatic tests, but there was no conclusion, there was no punchline, so we did Faro B and whatever. And I found it fascinating, interesting, but there was no...
And we were told how our results were so extraordinary, out of the range, for example, but nobody ever explored it.
Yeah, and that's a real burning issue, because we've invested so much time.
I'm too scared to let you know.
I think there's an opportunity. People want to know if they're psychopaths or whatever, and to maybe sort of create something positive. And I think there were some sort of sessions that were, choose my words carefully, crammed in for an hour, like psychological safety, very early areas that they're not as famous as Gareth, ambivalence, whatever, but they're emerging concepts. And I think getting some of those people in, they're not quite as big names, but people had an appetite for what they actually meant and unfolding whatever. So there's a couple of points about unfinished stories that you could build on.
And sorry, there's a number of people in this group I know in TCL that work with psychometrics. So, you know, that would be a really rich discussion, right?
The power station.
Well, I mean, it's very simple that there's been a lot of great academic research. I'll choose Meredith Belbin and teams, which was a fantastic bit of relevant work and backed up by psychological and now biological data that never bridged the gap to its full potential in the commercial world. You know, so I mean, only organisation I work for that embraced teams a la Belbin very seriously was Lloyds Bank, and it's such a building block of how you build culture and teams, whatever. So I think there is a need for conversion of rich academic research into more commercialised artifacts, more time spent in the conversion, so that more people in the wider audience, popularist or whatever you call it, pop music, whatever. But there's a need there to actually leverage this research better. I mean, Belbin's I think is a good example of something.
Thank you. I'd love to hear other folks' perspective on that.
May I just have a request to everybody here, just to build on what was said. Could each of you send me your program from the CCC if you still have it?
Sure.
Or it's one file by module, I think. With
one file by module.
Who was the teacher, the pre-reads, mandatory, non-mandatory, and so on. But I compile everything from all the cohorts. It should be 6 files or 6 files for each cohort. I compile everything, put that in the member space, so each of us know what we're speaking about, because we don't know all the teachers. We had different pre-readings, which is funny because we have the same knowledge now, coming from different teachers and so on. So I'd like to have that database available to all of us.
Thank you.
I wondered about it. I already wanted to ask about it. Do you have it?
I have some of it. I have some
okay.
of it. I might have 3 cohorts somewhere in my computer, and I never did the work to put it back into member space. But I would like to have. There would be 13 cohorts now.
So the notion. So thank you. The notion of powerful academic work that needs to be converted, and I do love that metaphor of the power station, because that's what happens at a power station. Things are converted. Yes, Rachel.
Yeah, just an example. I did the emotional intelligence questionnaire with a number of cohorts and debriefed them properly. I mean, hopefully properly. I can hear it in people's language. It remained with them. And I think if I'd had more time in the program, I would have elaborated more on that. But I think there's a really important connection between emotional intelligence and change agency. And I think we could really make something of that, even a whole module. You can hear a lot of people coming in with cognitive approaches, neuroscience and all of that. I mean, that's in the air at the moment. I think it would be very useful to have a whole program on that. And connect it to change agency and how we work as change agents and how those things come in when we're working as change agents, you know, in ourselves, the emotional intelligence in ourselves, but also using it to understand people's experiences of change. And the company.
Just a little comment. You tell me if it's not relevant. About Belbin. I'm really surprised to hear you say that about Belbin, because 20 years ago, and you see you're too young, Belbin was everywhere, and it's gone out of fashion. So I think my general comment is these things go through fashions, and then disappear, something else comes in.
Maybe that's the point. I mean, certainly I was.
But I think Belbin is very
ago.
powerful, very powerful, but it's gone out of fashion.
Yeah, but maybe that's it. Maybe it's the life cycle's not kept up.
Over there.
That would be good if you could be over there.
So we can see you.
That's right. Beside Elizabeth would be great. Thanks so much.
But I was just thinking, to me it's new that you use inventories like FireOB, and I was just thinking some of us I'm certified in FireOB and I don't use it very often, so maybe it could be a way to, if that is going to continue to offer feedback sessions or you know, if people wanted.
Insights,
So we
Love
can
that.
connect.
Yeah.
That's what TCL could offer to CCC.
I think when we're building the inventory of the modules, I think each one cohort should send in the list of tests that we did, and ours was quite extensive. And to me, the dots weren't joined. So yes, there were sort of discrete findings, whatever, but I wasn't really sure what it meant or what sense and meaning came out of it. But certainly there was no attempt to join the dots across all the different tests, and that to me was just an unfinished story.
But I think with the technology we have, Skype sessions and other, you know, if we knew that there was this need, or maybe we could chip in sometimes.
Webinars.
Yeah, webinars. But I mean, if it's feedback on an individual profile,
yes,
it
of
would
course.
need to be.
But it would be interesting to do a
individual.
webinar on all these different psychometric tests, and you know, because there's a lot of them out there now. Compare,
At this point,
contrast.
I need to ask a question, a background question, because I know something. I've had lots of chats with you, and I know that you folks are steeped in change, but there are some things I don't know, and learning a bit will help me ask questions as we go on. Are there folks here who have been product managers or product and service designers at any point along the way?
What kind of product?
Services, like, I don't know, designing a learning service, perhaps.
Not learning the technical service.
So there's lots of people who've designed services. That's very helpful. And the reason I ask is that we're in a strange situation here. You are the user, and you have been speaking so eloquently from the user's perspective over the last 40 minutes. And also, you are the designer. You are the product owner. And that's a different hat. And there are steps that you need to go through as a product designer and product owner. In IT product management, and it's a good template, there is a broadly used product manager's roadmap, product management roadmap, which in a matrix shows in detail the many tasks that need to be done along the way, because we'll think of the iPhone. There's a new launch of the iPhone basically once a year, and there's new things added to it. Well, they know 2, 3, maybe 4 years in advance that these things will be added down the road, and they think very, very carefully about how to test them, how to sequence them, how to launch them, and help people grasp them. And in the low resource world of the member-run organization, product management it's not the scale of an iPhone, but it's complex because the decisions are shared decisions and the resources are scarce. So as we continue to think about these delicious ideas, one of the challenges is, as product owners, product designers, how it's a special case for nurturing the idea. So at this moment, any tips from some of the folks who put their hands up about product design? Yes, Dorothy?
Well, I think in order to have a large enough group of people being willing to take on the commitment of arranging our seminars, I think it's very important that we kind of diminish the workload involved in that. And I think one of the ways we could do this was by accepting that we've matured enough as a group now to say we have certain formats that we know will work. We have the presentation, we have the spread, we can introduce some new open space. We have the Friday with the workshops. I mean, we have like Lego blocks, we have these building blocks, and as long as we can agree on one theme for the weekend, and make it fairly clear what's entailed in that theme, I think it's very easy to have different people being responsible for different Lego blocks
and have a
still
coordinator.
And still, have the experience that this fits together, because I think we've been very fortunate in the past to have a number of people putting in enormous amounts of work. But I also think that moving forward, we need to involve more people, but perhaps with a lower level of commitment on time and energy to make it realistic.
Yeah.
Well, to build on that, now maybe I don't know, but well, to build on that, I think we yesterday in our little group, and I also think we said it I said something in the plenary about inclusion, and that builds on exactly what you said, because I think there is something about how do we use all the fantastic resources we have in the community, both to do very practical things, to design the next conference and so on, but also to help people to engage, to go back to the cohorts and get people to come here, and a lot of things. So there is this. How do we think about, and how do we deal as a group with inclusion? I think.
And structure.
Yes,
because
sure.
I'd like to do everyone knows I'm the structure
Fantastic.
person now.
It's good.
I'd like to do
And Lord knows we need, I cannot tell you, I cannot begin to tell you how Lisa's structure genius has changed my life. So I can go beyond an endorsement of Lisa's structure genius.
So I'd like to use an example, and the example is the book. The book, I have not talked to one person involved in the book project that didn't love it. It was a fantastic experience. Everyone got to know someone new. We really pulled together. No one was left like, oh, I don't like their article, so I'm not going to edit it as well as I edited, somebody else's. And to me, the thread, the reason that project worked so well is, yes, the work was divided. Everyone knew what they were doing, but we had Julie at the helm watching. And I think the conference is a very good example. We can have, okay, I did the spread, but every once in a while Julie would call and say, are we okay with the spread? We always, I think, to have things be successful, we need a coordinator, no matter what that is, with the vision, to hold the vision. I also have to say, in doing the spread, I made jokes yesterday. Be careful, I volunteered to do this little thing, and here's what's happened. But I have to say, some of the people who did the spreads were people I knew, and I love them. They're wonderful. But some of the people who did the spreads, I didn't know. And I love them, and they're wonderful now, because I know them. And the best way, I think, for this group to grow is to get everybody to understand, just volunteer for one little thing. I started by just writing a summary of one workshop that we did. Right? Yeah. That's all. Can somebody write this down? Okay, I'll do it. And, here I am, and I am having a wonderful time. And Lars said this morning, he said, oh, did you sleep here? I was here at 8 o'clock for a conference at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So anybody who says, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have time to volunteer, come and spend a week with me.
I did, it's true.
So there's a very important point here, Henrik. I will contradict you because I don't like your idea.
Yes, good. So which is the idea you don't like?
The idea that some of us, product designer, product managers, have a process and we should use that process. There's no way we can do that.
Okay.
We're a volunteer organization, so we don't have time. We have nothing like the hierarchical way to manage organization. It's a definitively flat organization we have, because we want it to be flat also. And also, and I'm speaking from my experience of leading volunteer organization, because I've been doing that before TCL a bit. The most difficult is to get volunteers on board. Exactly what you were saying, just raise your hand and do something. And when you have somebody saying, I want to help, you say, yes. What can I do for you? And it's not, well, I have that in mind. It's not how it works. It's, who are you? What do you like to do? What can you bring? Okay, I'll find a way for you to do that for us, or for the group. And it's totally, there's no way you can work with a process or each of us have his own process and work with his own process, but a process, it's total chaos. The way we work is total chaos. We have calls every month where we join together, so calls for the board, calls for the book, calls for the program and so on, and who's been doing what and so on, and there's no real process. Each of us have a process, so but I will never impose a process to an organization as that.
No, I agree.
What I'm trying to do and what it seems to work, and I'm so happy it seems to work now, start to work, is getting people to say, okay, I can do it, just that. And
Well, I do have a disagreement, and this was a very fruitful one because those were lovely ideas. Yes.
Right. I saw Dorta, so Dorta, you may have something to say, but I just want to reserve a spot to disagree with Cecile.
Yeah.
And after Elizabeth.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Now we're talking.
Can I just build on that, because I've been sitting here writing it down and otherwise I'm going to blow it. So there are a couple of things and it's to do with process and it's to do with the ideas and based on some experience as well. So to go back to when we're talking about presenting the conference, and it's also relevant to this part of the discussion, is that in order to attracting volunteers and all that sort of thing, my sort of feeling is that, and it's a little bit like the programmatic change versus the emerging change. It always seems to be this. Everything I'm doing in dancing is a bit like that, but it's the visible and the invisible. So if we're talking about having open space for everybody to let's do nothing, let's just say come for 3 days and we'll sort it out when you get here, which is great, you can do that, because I wouldn't know how to do it. But the issue is, how do you then present that to people that they would want to come, unless they're accolades of that sort of thing. So there's parts that's visible, and then there's the part of it which is invisible. Even they sort of say, come and we'll have half a day that we do that. How do you get them to do that? How do you market that? How do you communicate that to people enough that they will get it and understand it? And how do you then understand who to coordinate all the different people who can come? Because this is we talked about this last couple of days also, is that we don't know who we are. We know who we are a bit, but we don't know all the potential out there, what they do, what their expertise is, what they're interested in, what their area of expertise and specialisation is, and that's something I think that we can processize or do, but then we need a member space which is interactive, i.e. social media kind of thing, where we can interact. And what can I just make one more point?
We're getting a stack here.
Just one more piece, please. It's because it's relevant as well. Is that when we're having, and it's relevant to this discussion, is when we're talking about decision making about what we want in the conference. This is these people around the table.
Yeah.
When we did the survey, there were 36 people who responded with what they wanted. Some of them are the same, and some of them are different. So that makes it even more complicated. Yeah. So this is not the decision making for me committee. This is a part of the decision making.
Yeah,
Sure. I agree.
Eamon, I've got a stack, but I won't forget you. Okay. And Rachel Dorte has been very patient.
Okay, so.
And Lisa, I won't forget you either.
2 points.
So, okay.
One, I would like to volunteer to organize half a day of unconference the next time we meet. I would volunteer to market it in a way that people get the idea of what is an unconference and what are the benefits of working in this way, how open space technology works. And I would also make some prep work where I would ask 5 or 6 people to say how can we get this conversation started? What would be on their mind? So
I volunteer to be on your committee.
Yes.
Sorry.
So point number 1. Point number 2. I strongly disagree with you, Cecile. I think we have a structure and a system working. It's biannual. It has a certain rhythm to it. If we increase the transparency of what is actually going on when it's going on, I think we can allow even more people to participate and be included. But the system and the structure is already there. It's just not a highly formal, top-down, organized process.
But we understand that.
I just have to do a really quick process pause here.
Yeah.
This is one of the best illustrations of the power of disagreement I have ever seen. Thank you so much for disagreeing.
I don't even do disagree, I think.
So you're disagreeing with the disagreement?
Oh, fantastic.
That was the disagreement.
You know, you're
Hussein.
looking from here, or you're looking
I want
from
to
there.
volunteer to teach all of you to sing.
Yes, that's right.
And
You can be,
Stop talking,
you,
please.
you can be in the unconference. You can be
Yes.
one of the sessions.
So I'll give you your songs.
Yeah.
Please let me know which language you like, and I can make French, German, whatever, you know, and I can sort of encourage you guys to come in every day. We can have a half an hour, sing along in your own language, whatever you like.
Beautiful.
You know.
Right, I'm going to get back to the stack.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, then Rachel, then.
I get to talk after Elizabeth.
Okay, all right.
Small,
No, sorry, forgive me, we've got a
Rebuttals.
stack. And Eamon's in the queue too, yes.
small point, I think. I think when we're looking for volunteers, whether it's in a structure or not in a structure, I think maybe we are being a bit off-putting by talking about asking people to join the board.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the
I
board
agree.
we need for legal reasons, it only needs to be 1.5 people. But, you know, a volunteer network.
And nice to have a bigger
is something
board though,
different.
because
Yeah,
you
it would be
know,
nice to have a
gives
bigger board.
people a really sense of
Yeah, but
creepiness
it's-
if you've got
yeah.
1.5 people.
I think that these are two different things.
Because
Yeah.
it's
not a sexy
it
sell.
Might, it
No.
might
Yeah.
seem formal, but it's not formal at all.
Yeah.
So I want to do a part rebuttal. I understand that when someone comes to you and says, oh, I'd like to be involved, perfectly acceptable and a wonderful process to say, tell me about yourself. What do you do? What are you interested in? But there's a bunch of people that I wouldn't have volunteered. I can tell you, I am so busy, and I'm also on the board of 2 other associations. I would never have walked up to you and said, hey, do you have any extra work for me? But when you said, can somebody do a summary? So I think what we have to do is keep an open mind. We're doing both. But to say we live in chaos isn't exactly, you know, it's not honest. We may be lying a bit.
It's not very
So-
attractive to
and
come
it's,
join
and
either
it's not very
organisation.
attractive too, I agree. So maybe one of the things we should be looking at is what processes do we have, and not formalizing them so much, but to say, if you're a volunteer and coming in to do anything, you will be supported. And this is the way we support you. And we're not asking for a lot, right? So I'm just part of the selling, you know.
And by the way, in the last, to build on that, in the last few years, I couldn't tell you when it started, frontline social service agencies have really ramped up their game on recruiting and nurturing and caring for and training volunteers. It's been transformed, which is to say that there's probably some good literature on how you intake volunteers in a diverse situation. Rachel!
I wanted to just bring up a point about inclusion, and unfortunately I'm going to have to exclude myself in a few minutes, so I'm sorry to sort of land it in. But I think you know, the people who've been carrying this organisation have done an extraordinary job, and I know there have been a lot of invitations to people to come in. But I think, and maybe despite people's good intentions, and maybe because of the chaotic functioning, there have been experiences that have been quite painful for some people of exclusion. And I think that's something that needs to be dealt with as well.
Yeah.
And people need to be attentive to that, of how that works, what happens. Is it just, that, you know, maybe a problem of communication with people when people are so busy? I don't know, but you know, there are a number of examples that other people can talk about. So that's, I think that's a kind of under the surface phenomenon that needs to be explored.
Can we still interrupt, or
Of
do you
course.
have a list?
No, you can still interrupt.
Okay.
Maybe you used to get an example to understand the data behind this.
Please, because I might know some of them, but
Yeah,
I might not
it
know
worries
who
me,
you're
and I'm
speaking about.
alarmed, and I think,
Yeah,
oh, do
well,
I
because
understand what you're
which
saying?
is why I say it's maybe just despite people didn't realise.
No,
you
I mean,
know.
exhibit number 1, book project number 1. I
Yeah.
mean, that was very simple. We had, I think, 17 or 18 people writing chapters, going along, putting a lot of effort into that, which ended up in a very non-transparent decision-making situation with 8 chapters being selected, and the rest of us, you know, big questions mark as to what happened there, why wasn't my chapter included.
And we never really talked about it.
No, but and we could
Well,
remove
Just before we get,
And-
just to give a few other examples before we get into the details of that, one other one is we once, all three of us, proposed a workshop on complexity, and we started building a program. We presented it to people, and then it just disappeared, and it got taken over by somebody else, and somebody else did something different. And there was absolutely no discussion of that, and it just, which doesn't make you feel like proposing anything after that.
So,
and then there was another one with the building of the book. I think it was Suleiman who was sort of project managing, or trying to help.
He was
project
bullied
managing
out,
the book, and he
actually.
So, I mean, this happens in organisations. There are always issues of exclusion, inclusion, but I think it's important to talk about it and work out what happened, and talk about the different perspectives on that, and ensure that there's attentiveness to that going forward.
But I mean, I would like to I'm not disagreeing, but I'm being one of the person who's felt this kind of exclusion. I'm not sure if it's helpful to dwell on this, because I mean, for me personally, that pain is 2 years old. I think we're in a very different place right now. I feel that anything I would like to include in this forum can be included. I felt the second book project was exemplary in every way of the way people were dealt with. I remember having a first Skype conversation with Julie, asking her, so does this mean that I'm in or out? And you laughed and you said, of course, everybody who wants to contribute are in.
So maybe it's just a chapter to close, and something to put to bed, and then move on to something else.
I'd like to propose an approach that you might want to consider to exclusion. Because exclusion is so dangerous, even though it's better, it's something to keep on the radar. It's something to be testing for, ongoing, forever. And also, I know that there are people here trained in positive deviance. I know there are people here trained in appreciative inquiry, and those technologies are pretty powerful for dealing with things like exclusion. What do we want instead?
Absolutely.
So that's a question worth attending to. Elizabeth.
Yeah. This is difficult to say, but I'm just trying to think how to say the exclude. I am thinking particularly about the book project. It arises out of the volunteer organisation flat volunteer organisation. Somebody says they will do something, and when you do that, you have to accept or reject. But if you accept a volunteer to do something, you don't quite know what's going to happen.
And it arises out of the human race.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Within the last 2 weeks, I was bruised when one of the masters of soft skills made a misstep. And it damaged my reputation.
An organisation that doesn't have checks and balances and hierarchies and things, somebody to sort of check in because they have to make a monthly report or something.
I invited somebody into, just to finish the story, I invited somebody into a process, and this is somebody who's got extraordinary soft skills, like he's built a great career on his soft skills. And then after the kitchen table conversation, he sent an email that offended more than one of the guests at the table.
Yeah.
And anyway.
I think I don't.
Could I just
sorry.
Rachel, thank you so
much, and farewell to everybody.
Yeah, take care.
I would love to be included and contribute whatever I can contribute going forward.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Paris meeting with
And
pleasure.
even though you did need to leave early, thank you so much for joining the family at the table this morning.
Thank you very much for creating this space.
I would just like to say that I think I don't think we should dwell and dig deep into exclusion, but I think it's important to understand why inclusion is important.
Yeah.
So, and that's maybe because I'm the positive deviance guy, I don't know, but I think we should flip it and talk about how when does inclusion work? When does it work well? What do we need to do to make it work better?
I also don't agree that in a flat organisation you cannot police exclusion, because you can do peer pressure.
Sure.
And if you find yourself in a position where, and by the way, that happened to me. So I actually, when we were doing that, you don't know that, but when we were doing the second book, what actually happened was exactly the same. Well, there was a lot of kind of pushing around and bullying, but the way I handled it was not. I went up. You know, I went up the chain. You know, and well, I know some people were not happy, so I just said, well, you know, talk to her or whatever, and then whatever blew up. But, you know, at the end of the day, if something happens, you're not happy, you have to talk about it.
Yeah,
Because
and I think that's really an important point.
And without moving too quickly to decision, Lars has made an offer. I think it was an offer, wasn't it, Lars?
Yeah, maybe. Yes, it maybe.
So Lars has maybe made an offer. Let's keep it in the air. Let's all remember that the idea of flipping from exclusion to inclusion from a PD perspective might be useful. Eamon.
So coincidentally, my point builds on Lars again. I think the most common quoted corporate values at the moment are diversity and inclusion. And going back to your question about products and services, and my experience in financial services is that we start off building a capability for a community. And somewhere along that journey, you realize actually the community is multiple communities with different needs, okay? And the point about TCL is that there will be multiple communities and multiple needs. In terms of setting parameters around what we do, you can create a common aspiration around multiple different communities and needs, and that won't go away. I guess the second point is building on the discussion with Elizabeth and Belvin, and it's another unfinished story from CCC12. Many people remark that a lot of the subject matter was from the 40s, the 50s, the 30s, and there's an outstanding question about, well, where's all the 20th century and 21st century? I think maybe that's one theme we could build on, and maybe builds on some of the more recent stuff about psychological safety and ambivalence. People would love to know what happened after the 40s. Did anything happen, or did we all stop thinking about organisation? I think you could present a theme about here's the latest populist, relevant research, whatever it's doing. I think people would actually love to come along and absorb some of that.
I have a story about inclusion. You were saying that inclusion is a rising theme today. This was about 6 years ago. A friend of mine was running for political office, and he was an investment banker running for Canada's Socialist Party, and I thought that was so wild that I threw myself. I'm not a member of the Socialist Party, but I just was so delighted at an investment banker running for the Socialists. I thought, I got to help out. So I was very active in his campaign. One night he went to an all-candidates meeting hosted by the Canadian Society for the Deaf. As background, I should tell you that my late father was profoundly deaf. He went deaf before I was born, so he could lip read, but I lived my life until just a year ago with a man who was deaf. So you would think that I would be familiar with the deaf world. I walked into the meeting room at the Canadian Society for the Deaf, and it was an overwhelming experience of inclusion, because it wasn't just American Sign Language. It wasn't just, what are the other main ones? For the blind, deaf, dumb, there were people, I'm going to take your hand if I may, there were people sitting like this, communicating with somebody who was blind, deaf, dumb, several of them around the room. It was an overwhelming experience. And the thought that came to my head is, oh, I have never understood inclusion.
Thank you for that story. I have a point about inclusion and leadership. And I think, based on my experience with this group, when inclusion works really well in this group, it's when we have a clear, transparent process, and we have strong leadership being executed and being allowed. Because I think we really need that in a very flat,
Please
organized...
forgive me, but would you rewind the tape? Because of the theme, I think it would be...
Okay.
Let's start again.
Okay, so I had a point on leadership and inclusion, and I was saying that in my experience with this organization, when we succeed in including people, it's when we have a clear and transparent process, and we have very strong leadership being executed and allowed by the group in clear intervals. So it's very transparent when we have stop and go decisions. When will we be able to influence this? And then for the rest of the time being, there's one person who has the mandate to lead. Because otherwise we get stuck in details and too many people having too many opinions about the color of the paper or we just get lost. And I think it's very important in an organization like this to say we trust each other enough to say, okay, so who's on the organizing committee of the next meeting? We give them the mandate to do this, that. We know there will be a survey. We know the program will be built and finalized around this time. Then we have another window for influence and opinion, and then that's it. And then we move along. I mean, to make it, so I think we should, as a group, get better at kind of giving each other the mandate for strong leadership.
And supporting.
Yes.
So I completely agree, and I can see a practical thing that's in your Lego blocks. Of course, you're Danish, you talk about Lego blocks. That in those chunks, it's clear what people can make decisions on and cannot make decisions on, and then people do it. And we might not all like all those decisions, but we've given that over, and that's fine because it's a volunteering organization, and otherwise we'll discuss everything constantly.
And as long as it's transparent, then it's all right. I think it's perfect. Yeah.
Cecile?
But yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, even though I hate the word process, sorry. But I agree on structure. Process is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is not us. But structure, yes, we have structure just because we have the skills or the character to bring structure like you do, like I do, like Julie do, and we're kind of project manager DNA. So, and now about making the decision and allowing leadership. Speaking for me, which I am happy that, and I hate to say that, but it seems that my leadership is recognized, but I am not a control and command person at all. So when I need to make a decision because I see this is going mad, or it has happened that I had some difficult conversation with some people, some members. I had to do it because it's my role, but I always make sure that at least what I call the board, which is the 5 people around me helping in daily decision, are okay with what I'm going to do. And I always want to have a feedback on what I plan to do, and not do it on my own. So that's where leadership, it's I don't know how to say that in good English, but
You've said it really well.
Okay.
No, it sounded pretty clear to me that if there are folks who need some further clarification. No. Katja, how are we doing?
Actually earlier thought we should probably go back to the thought how we're going to attract other people to join the team.
Yes.
Yeah,
There was a lot of talking about ourselves. And,
So how?
Sorry, I'm going to give it to Mason.
Just talking about format, inclusion, exclusion, and then content as well as meetings. First of all, I'm convinced we have structure. I just wanted to come back and just mention, because I was part of the Book 2 project, I like what Lars said about transparency. There you get, when you have a project, when you have to get something done, the decisions would have to be made. And you never have all the members of TCL at that moment around to make that decision. So by definition, it has to be somewhat reductionist. But because it's transparent, and because Julie, when she came to deadlines and making certain decisions, was very, very clear about what had to be done. There's work that has to be done. We can't just leave it up in the air. And Cecile does the same thing. And then communicates clearly without people feeling that they've been stabbed in the back or left out. It works. And it does work because we are volunteers. And I'm sitting on the board of 2 foundations. I'm a member of the Rotary Club. It's all volunteer. And volunteers will take responsibility if they volunteer for what has to be done. If they drop out, which can happen, there's a space which has to be filled, and there's an appeal which goes out. And that's the whole point of ownership. If you have ownership, the idea of ownership is, I feel responsible for making sure this survives, sustainable, and moves forward. And it works, the process works, it's emergent. The other thing is about content. I sort of notice that when one comes out of CCC, there's a very sort of still academic flavor and feeling to change management. And you want to continue that, and you'd like to supplement theory, and it's quite true that there are a lot of new theories, new books that appear today that CCC didn't deal with. I'm thinking in particular, for myself, it was mindfulness wasn't dealt with. The whole area of what Otto Scharmer is talking about and emergence wasn't dealt with, but it's very important. Where did that go? What happened? And I think that here, with practitioners, we are able to fill that. And the other thing that's interesting is, as you leave the academic scene and you become yourself a practitioner and work with it, you suddenly realize that you no longer are that hungry to have a superstar talk from an academic point of view. It's as important to listen to people who are practitioners and who are working in the field to come and talk and share. And that's where the conversations become important. But regarding content, I've often wondered about, there's obviously an appeal of a superstar, whomever that may be. Now, the question was, and I'm sort of putting that out as a question, is a financial question. As long as we're dealing, hopefully, and we have pull here from the academics, Rachel and you, Elizabeth, dealing with the possibility of pulling in people from either Oxford or I should say Paris, there was a possibility that they would feel empathy and they would give of their time and do it on a volunteer basis. But if you're pulling in superstars that we might like to hear, and writers we like to, people who've written books and so on, who don't know about us, yes, they'll come, but they need to be paid, and we don't have the budget. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk
negotiate.
about
We negotiate,
Okay, so it's
and
possible.
from time to time we've been able to get some fees down and to invite
possible.
people.
So
So
it's
we
not a
try.
hurdle. It's
We
not a hurdle.
we always try. We always try.
I don't want to lose sight of Katja's question, and thank you so much. That was a wonderful summary, Mason, of some of the themes we've been talking about, but I don't want to lose sight of Katja's question. Lars.
Well, I'm just thinking, I agree there should be this combination of a star or whatever, a great speaker, and a process like we all value. And I don't know, and please be honest, cohort 12, it's been a couple of years since I saw Gareth the whole week, so I was only there for, I think, Thursday to Saturday, and I didn't really see him live. A couple of years ago, he was really, really great, and a couple of years ago, I spoke with him about coming to one of our events, and he would love to. He just needed to know it in advance. So was he alive and kicking, or was he getting old, or what was it like?
He was great.
He was great?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
that might be one possibility we could investigate.
So I need to get us onto the theme of how do we attract new members.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, help you go there.
Thank you.
There's a couple of things that I've heard consistently through the weekend, and I propose that it's a place to start. So it's not answering the question, but it's components of the question. We've talked about the connection of people. And some of the ideas batted around were, if we get, one person from their cohort to call. Other questions were, one-on-ones, just, making connections between the conferences. So that's one example. My example, I have to say, I've just been sucked in completely through Julie, and how I got to the point of being a volunteer.
Her evil plan is working.
Is you know what? It was a conversation at a conference, where we kind of hit it off and said, oh yeah, we should talk later, And I think that goes to the human connection. So I'm not, I don't want to propose answers, but certainly there is interest. There's something to do, because I believe very strongly from the conversation we have, doers in the group that really like to see something come out of it. But what do people think of that? Like, can we build on that?
I think we can. I think some of us talked about it in the club room yesterday too. That it's a very relational thing. So it's not only an email or, a person in one of the modules saying, please come and join the TCL. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's working sometimes, but it's really relating. And I think a few of you said how come that I actually joined, and it was actually having conversations with somebody else about what's going on here and why it's valuable, and stuff like that. So I think we could do more of that.
I'm actually interested in Alexi. You're kind of sitting, watching and pondering. Do you have any thoughts?
No. Just listening.
Oh, okay.
Thinking.
It was just a look on your face. I thought.
Do not imagine what you
Well, I was just thinking that maybe one idea could be to get some, before you leave today, get some testimonials from the people here from cohort 12 on what was it like to be part of this group. How did it feel like? What are you looking forward to in Paris? So we're already starting to kind of build on that. I think we need to work peer to peer. So I think you are much better at selling this group to your cohort than we would be.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Cohort 12. Let's hear from cohort 12.
Having said that, so we are the last ones who have joined who have been on the journey, and we always were very close in emailing each other and joking in our email circle. And actually, I think that it's already disappeared. So communication alone, I think, won't help.
Okay.
It's empty words, is my opinion.
Yeah.
I think you need to make it attractive for people to come. And then once they feel actually this is a continuation of CCC, I can continue my journey. People might attracted to come again. I didn't know that this might be a continuation. And I only
Interesting.
I didn't really. I expected it to be a continuation of my personal journey and my educational journey, but I didn't expect that it might be a continuation of an emotional journey that I experienced while I was doing CCC. So, and people won't know this.
No.
And
We could
they
be
need to
clearer about
experience.
that. We could definitely be clearer about that then. Yeah.
But I think it needs to be attractive for people to join. There are a lot of, and actually the FIRO B that we did showed where a lot of individuals who are very sophisticated. Speaking of our CCC, I think there are a lot of people who think they don't need the change leaders. They're very successful in themselves. So they're not necessarily coming for the networking, or they wouldn't come for that. But they would probably come for the group dynamic. But that's something they wouldn't know without having been here.
But how can you communicate group dynamic?
I think
Could
they
you
have
do
to.
that, perhaps? Maybe you're better, this comes back to, maybe you're the best positioned to communicate to your cohort than we would.
No, and that's it. So effectively, before we have to decide how do we work as ambassadors now for this group. What do we want to feed back? This is something we need to discuss, and how we're going to feed this back.
So I want to make, what a wonderful statement.
Yeah.
We four have to decide how we want to work as ambassadors for this group.
Yes,
Thank you.
this
Beautiful.
is something we four have
Good.
to decide. So because we have to then gather and say, okay, these were our impressions, and these impressions will vary. So maybe Katja has a different impression than I have, or than Eamon, or Esmeralda, and we have to see: do we find a common ground where we say we agree, we all four agree to it, and this is what we want to bring back to our cohort? Do we not find this? Do we do it individually? So every one of us will then decide what they bring back, and this is something we need to discuss. Yeah. And one, may I add one?
Yes, you may add one. And then Lisa, you had something you wanted to say?
I think I think it's also important that you do not expect that everybody will join and will be there every time. So you also said some of you did not come for some years, some of it, we cannot do it and be there all the time, 2 times a year. So for some it might work out because it is just part of their, also of their daily lives, because it just fits in. Others will not.
Yeah.
So we will always have these different levels. And this is okay, I think. Because
and it's actually not just okay, but it's actually a very good thing.
yeah, and we need this. So it is, and I also don't know if I will be able to come to Paris or only then September. I don't know yet.
So I'd like to, I just remembered what I was going to say, and I don't know if it builds but it introduces a new wrinkle, is most of our energy is focused around the 2 conferences, and this is not, I'm not having an original thought. This has happened, this has been talked about at several conferences I've attended, and I'd just like to bring it forward because, and even at this conference, people have talked about how can we do things in between. And that would build our membership, even for the people, like right now, I renew my membership when I register for a conference.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm paying whatever the conference fee is and the membership, I'm paying that for the conference, right? Because I go to the conferences. But if we had something in between, and Cecile made a statement yesterday, the webinars are a great way to promote. Maybe there's people that don't need to self-promote or promote what they're doing in their work, but they might like to promote an idea that they're testing. They might like to experiment with a group of people that are knowledgeable. I think there are things that we could do outside of the conferences for members, paid members, that would be,
or,
you know.
Yes.
Yes, but.
And yes, plus, since the conferences actually work, I'm pretty convinced that of our, the cohort that I was part of, and Lars was part of, etc., that if there is a Gareth Morgan, if there's this merry lady, in there, and it feels like another kind of module on that, that
more people will come.
10 other people will join.
Yeah, you're right.
I think that content is quite important. And then they will sign up because they sign up for the conference.
Yeah, not taking anything away from the conferences, because you know I love them, but just adding.
So I've got sort of mixed views about this superstar speaker, because I mean, having experienced TCL for a couple of days, I really see a DNA that's different and perhaps evolved from CCC. Therefore, I'm not sure you want to attract people who just want to come and listen to a superstar. It's not consistent with the DNA I've experienced over the last 2 days. And I think that
I agree.
is important in how we feed back.
But as Julie says, we're not the decision makers.
It's going deep into a subject, in one single subject, going deep in there, and that might include
the other thing is that just about speakers is that, in my experience with many speakers, is that they take no prisoners, and they come here and they speak. Now, my personal experience this time, and I don't know, but who were they? Let me see. There was Steve, wasn't there? And there was Margaret. And there was Rick, but Rick was different because
he's weird.
But I have to say, I spent a lot of time and effort bugging Steve, a little bit Margaret, but very much Steve, because I know he had a very specific idea about what he was interested in, and we know that, right? But I really spent a lot of time, and you'll see sometimes a wry expression on his face when I was talking, because I really did bug him about what he was going to say, how he was going to say it, making it relevant, listening to people, being interactive, letting people ask questions. And I think that is also key, because I will not ever allow, well, that's rubbish, because if they do it, you can't stop them, but what I do not want is somebody to come here and talk at us, even if it's interesting, that we cannot dovetail it into our DNA. And I think that's the sort of thing, and that's what worries me a little bit about the star.
Yeah.
Because normally the stars are stars because they are very egocentric.
Yes. Dorothy, I'm going to give it to John and then you.
Yeah, well, the question is, how do we get more members? We're now talking about our own experiences. We are already members, so we're not the problem here. We're not the answer to the question.
John, do you know the story from Operations Research? about the analysis of bombers during World War II. So bombers were not coming back; they were being shot down. And so the first analysis said, we'll look at where there are the holes in the fuselage and strengthen where there are holes in the fuselage. And then the operations research people went, wait a minute. Look at the places where there are no holes in the fuselage and reinforce those places, because the places where there are no holes in the fuselage are the planes that are not coming back.
Yeah.
And when you said we're looking at the wrong people here, that reminded me of that brilliant analysis. So what are we missing?
Well, I think there are two things. We've got two constituencies to think about. One is the ones who already sold. The other one are the ones who have already disconnected. So we might need two strategies as part of a marketing plan to satisfy the answer to the question, but also, to your point, to satisfy the people who are already committed. So we've got two issues, and maybe we need two different approaches that dovetail. So the idea that maybe we don't really need a star, and what does that mean? Because it might interrupt the DNA. We would then hopefully find the star that's not going to interrupt the DNA. I mean, it doesn't rule it out.
No.
But nor does not having a star be likely to bring in the other potential members who have already disengaged. So we've got two things to do.
Beautiful.
But they haven't done
just from a timing perspective, I'd love to hear from Dorota, and then we're going to shift gears.
Well, maybe I can be part of that, because I want to increase the sense of urgency here. Full disclosure, I want this group to be part of my professional life, my whole professional life. Right now, if we look at critical mass, we are not enough people in this seminar. I think it's the first time since I've joined this group that there are as few of us sitting in this room on a Sunday. And I think we need to attract more people, and we need to do it in Paris. I don't think we have that much time. I think we'll lose momentum. And I think that we need to be pragmatic about the star thing, that we need to have a name that rings bells in Paris. I think that's critical, because maybe people will come for the wrong reasons, but then they will stay for the right ones.
I don't know.
Wow.
Sorry, I don't know about all the stars, and I don't know the Mary Lady. Sorry, but I definitely know that Gareth Morgan would be having conversations with people, not talking at people. Where other stars would be talking
Mary
at
Crossan,
people.
the same thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're saying...
But with Gareth, we have more people from other cohorts also knowing him.
Mhm.
So there we have a wider distribution than with Mary.
I don't know. Yeah.
How about if the CCC 13 was in... No, sorry, we were invited. Sorry, we were invited to Paris as well. Yeah.
Yeah, CCC 13 have got Module 6 starting on Tuesday.
Oh.
So
Okay.
just doing
Well,
this.
if I think I understand, I might be reading too much into your point, but something that you may wish to discuss with the project, with the course directors, is to be planting seeds right from the very first module about the change leaders.
Yeah. So how about inviting the new CCC
Elizabeth
members?
just put her head in her hands.
Yeah. Thanks to Elizabeth, and thanks to, we're still reconnect. Well, it's a bit complex, but we're connected to the new path.
I think
And
your session with Eileen at module, whatever it was, in Paris,
two or three, I think, very early.
that was one of the
very
more
early.
successful ones.
So we finish in 23 minutes, and I promised you that we would finish in a way that helped keep some ideas alive, and I'm going to attempt that. I do try to live up to my commitments. There have been quite a number of really interesting ideas that you have, some action-oriented ideas that you have mentioned, and Dorota just threw down a gauntlet onto the table. Did you know that the word engage means throw down a gauntlet?
Engage.
Engage.
And did you know I used to be a fencer, so
Wow. So no wonder it was you who said. So no wonder it was you who said, let's write the damn book. So there you go. So Dorte has engaged us. What do you think? How do you feel about what Dorte has suggested as an action, not the only action? I'm going to make an assumption here, but I want you to let me know if this is a valid assumption, that it would be unwise to take on too many actions coming out of the session. But some this is a seasoned group of people. You don't need to make final decisions in the next 20 minutes. You can take a few out and weigh them and talk about them among the group before deciding on the final actions. But we do need to make sure that a few things are well cared for as they leave this room so that they stay alive and grow. So what are your thoughts on Lars? For obvious reasons, I'm going to ask you to pass for a moment.
What are those reasons?
I'll explain to you after.
I will be part of that.
Yes.
Can I just ask? We only have 20 minutes, and this may be beyond what we are trying to. You are trying to conclude.
I am trying to conclude, and so.
But still, I'm sitting on something that I need to say.
Okay. 30 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. It was yesterday with Steve. He challenged us. Would we get engaged in the wider change agenda in the world, and us getting engaged in these large, what did he call them? Systems, impact hubs. Yeah. And I just was wondering whether that is also part of our, and I know we can't land it, but I think there's something in there that I'm not sure how to, but we need to talk about it.
So thank you for tabling it. Thank you for tabling it, and I'm so terribly sorry it cannot be in the next 20 minutes.
Okay.
But thank you so much for tabling it. Because with this size of a group, and with so many good ideas, and with a request from a member of the group that we give serious thought to one idea, we have our hands full for the next 20 minutes.
But let's talk about it afterwards.
Let's talk about it after.
Thank you.
In there we need to.
Yes.
Engaging in recruitment.
Yes.
Right? And again, I'm going back to the Rotary Club, because recruitment is always an issue, to keep the club going and to bring in new blood or get old blood still flowing. What they do is the Rotary Club, a bit like this group, is based on actions, social actions, but the connection, the real connection, the underlying connection is the emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
Is finding that, in fact, people take ownership and feel good coming to meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we recruit? We recruit, members are being asked to, each one, reach out to their network, to the people they know. And in our case, it's an alumni association. So again, I come back to the cohort. I'm in cohort 9. I've got to go back. I have to go back. I want to go back and shake that tree. This time, there've been, I think, 4 or 5 people that came, which is one of the highest levels of appearance for cohort 9. But I haven't gone back enough. So in my particular case, I volunteer engaged to really go back and shake that tree. And I think that's the way we can get it going.
That's the beginning of it, but I would very much like that. Yeah.
But it's got to have a message.
Yeah, we need some kind of overarching communication strategy. I agree with John. It would be nice to have things that we do normally as change agents, create a communication, promotion, marketing strategy, make sure the messages are in sync. It would be really nice to
Yeah, I mean, if it was going to be soon, it could be a review of this conference, which would be new. But ideally, it should be, to be more positive, looking forward to the Paris conference, to what's going to be really good about being at that. Because then there's a call to action there, rather than just a recollection.
Yeah. So, just a review of the conference sounds very formal, but maybe just a kind of blog-like comments from everybody about a sentence or two about what they've enjoyed or got out of it.
Yeah, that would be actually a small action we could take. Would everyone commit to writing 1 or 2 sentences on the blog about this conference and their experience?
The experience, yeah, the journey, what we liked about the experience.
Because if everybody at the table does it, and we get maybe the people
I'm not quite
are
sure where
this morning.
I'm suggesting putting it.
But we could put it in on the site with the
like all the conference stuff is there, right? We
Does
could put it on
anybody
that
look?
page.
No, it's preaching
We
to
could
Birmingham.
send, but we could send a note out.
It
Couldn't
should
we
go in
include
multiple
it?
directions.
Yeah,
Once
yeah.
you've got it, you can
Yeah.
send it
Then you can,
through every
yeah.
means.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I have access, or you have access to cohort 13. Now, all cohorts, I like the idea of ambassadors
Mhm.
because it adds one more layer to what we are doing centrally, which is we're trying to personalize that. It's Julie writing, am I writing that we need more like if you talk to your cohort or you talk to your cohort, it's one more hook.
Yeah.
But it's that could be a pre-sale. You still need a call to action
Yeah,
to get
we do.
somebody to go and do something,
Yeah.
rather than just
So, but excuse my Scandinavian directness. I have to ask a question because some of the really powerful people in this group are not present in this room right now. So I need to understand. Point one: what decisions have already been made about Paris? I mean, do we have any kind of restraints regarding
Melbourne.
theme, speakers? Who's gonna be in charge of designing the program? Who's gonna be on board or whatever? Have anything been made that's not in this room? Because I'd just like to know.
No.
No, we just booked the location. I
No,
think
the
that's
date, we have a date in mind. We have a quote from the CIUP that I am to confirm, and I have delayed until we have this conference because I wanted everybody to be okay with the date.
Okay.
We will build the budget with Mrs. Treasurer, which will be probably the same kind of budget we had in the past. And we have no idea about the theme, we have no idea about
Well, it's
the
not that we
team.
don't have it. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's not that we have no idea about the theme. I did 2 surveys 6
Oh,
months
yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One
but
was
we haven't decided,
Yeah.
or we
But we-
haven't even spoken about it.
well, we have had some informal discussions about it, but we haven't actually
I was
decided.
not in.
That's okay,
Oh,
Cecile.
this isn't them with the kitchen
Look, I've
table.
got
No,
a.
I was provoking. I
Julie,
was provoking.
are you going to coordinate the next
I
conference?
don't know.
Would
Well,
you
so
like?
next session,
Would you like
be
to?
interested
Yeah,
in?
sure, but yes.
So would it be helpful, just because there's people at the table now, and not excluding people who are not at the table, but would it be helpful for you if there were people here who want to help, if they just volunteer now so you know you've got a team?
It would be great because when I called a meeting to volunteer before, I got 3 people
Dorda.
on the call, one of which was me.
It's nice when
one of
people are
which
in
was
the room.
Mark, and the other
Dorda.
one didn't come. So
Okay, we've got
Oh,
4
good.
people, 5 people for your team, and we can put out a note.
Rachel as well,
So
I think.
raise
Amen.
high.
I've got you, I've got Rachel. So Eamon, Lars, and Hassan. Oh, but can you tell me what you're going to do?
I just
Or
want to
what-
help.
I want to
Excuse me,
help.
sorry, whoop, time out.
Yeah, that's okay.
That will be offline.
Yeah,
Okay.
offline, yeah.
Now, Katya,
I have one. Sorry.
Yes?
I have one comment. I think we need to decide very, very soon if we're going to reach out to one of these speakers because
Yeah.
April is not. It's
It's
not so
close.
far away.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Elizabeth? When is Mary Crossan supposed to be doing her spiel?
Next week?
Next year.
September then.
Does she do September or I'm
No, September, yeah, the module 6. I've
maybe
never
we
met
could-
her. I've never been
I
involved
tried
in
to
that
get
one.
her here. She wasn't available because it was too late. I tried to get her for next September. I think she misunderstood my question. So we can. Okay.
Try again.
Okay.
Try
I'll
again.
try.
So maybe Gareth.
Morgan is in
Well, no,
April,
try again.
and it's actually the 1st of April to the 3rd or something.
So should we try Morgan? Is
Yes.
that what you want?
Yeah. Yes, I think that
Are
would
people
be easy to
interested?
get him to prolong his stay in
Yeah.
Paris.
Exactly.
Are people interested around the table in listening to Gareth Morgan for?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I would suggest is we put it out to, put out a newsletter again and say, this is what we're thinking. Again, engagement, right? We don't have to make the
but we need to
decision.
survey more people. So.
Yes, exactly, so we put
But I
it out
think
to
the way
everybody.
we pitch Gareth is that actually his book, Images of Organization, is the basic DNA of the program.
Mhm.
That's a good pitch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's fantastic.
So yes, Dennis.
So just in terms of process and decision making, I think it's perfectly okay to, if you're in the room, you can make the decisions. So I think it's perfectly okay for this group to kind of say, okay, we'll first go and try Gareth Morgan, and
Yes.
and just do that.
Yes.
without kind of needing consent of a
Yeah.
wider group.
I would
I think
prefer
so
to
too.
just send a note out, but most people won't
Okay.
get back to us. But if there's any people with strong opinions either way, and they'll probably be really excited.
Will
So
it be
that
token
builds.
consultation?
Okay, I'm going to grab the reins. Folks, I'm grabbing the reins. I'm
Thank
grabbing the reins. So I'm going to lift the hood very briefly again and say that something I very frequently do is that when somebody expresses an issue or a problem, and then we flesh that problem out and spend some time discussing it, at the end of that phase, I always turn to that person and say, so how did we do? Good. What should we talk about now? We have 11 minutes. And there were so many actions that have been mentioned in the discussion. Was there another action? Yes.
I think you mentioned something important there. There are people who have left us. So
Or never joined.
or never, yeah.
More particularly the ones that have left
Yeah.
us.
Some of the people that have not joined, we could reach out to them through the ambassador format or whatever we call it,
Ambassador
going back
network,
to our
it's nice.
cohorts and so on.
Ambassador network.
Yeah, something like that. But what about the people who have left? Can we do something? Because there can be natural reasons and okay reasons, but it can also be something that we could deal with. in
We
some
need
way.
to find out, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we should.
Well, we know who
need to
they
find
are.
out.
Some of them, but due to the discussion we had earlier, I did not know the case you mentioned. I did not know that, so we don't know all of them. I know some of them because I've been in touch, but
The cases, what do you mean by that?
The book and what we were
Oh,
talking
the
about
exam-
before.
yeah, sure, sure.
But I think,
Interesting.
you know, I think.
But I think here again, the ambassador are key because sending an email or a survey, why did you left and why don't you want to come
Yeah,
back?
no,
That doesn't
no,
work.
no,
No.
Doesn't work.
it has to
So
be.
It's rather honestly what I would like is that we have 13 cohorts. I like 13 names of ambassadors. So
Yeah.
I'm very
Mhm.
in control, sorry, or in command or whatever. But it would be nice if getting out of this room, we can have a list of 13 ambassadors.
Mhm.
Since Lars is already doing other things, I can be the ambassador for our cohort, if you want.
So
Thank you.
you're what? So
4.
4. So
I can
then-
make the list for you, then you
Okay,
can.
that's offline as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
So
offline.
chief of ambassadors.
I was going to use up the other 9 minutes.
You're darn right. Yes, Data.
I have an idea for a theme for Paris. If we succeed in getting Gareth Morgan, it's coming back to you, the picture you drew, Barrett, yesterday about Stacey's figure.
Mm.
I would like to explore the land between complexity and chaos. Because I think right now what's happening in many of our countries, I mean, it's not only surfing the edge of chaos, maybe we are on our
Tripping
way
into
to
it,
chaos. So the kind of leadership,
The frontier of
the leadership frontier, when you're not sure if it's complex or if it's chaos,
Well,
I think...
and in your communication, you can point out to people that this is not a theoretical issue.
No.
And let me just build on. If we are going to get Gareth Morgan involved, to develop what that means with Gareth beforehand,
Yeah, okay, wonderful.
you
Yeah.
know, to flesh out your idea with him. And I hope he would just join in that conversation soon.
Who's
Very
going to
soon.
approach him?
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
offline.
offline.
Eamon.
Just one more point on Gareth. I think we also need to discuss, is it a one-off or is he going to be a resident centre of excellence with continuity from conference to conference? Because that might attract a lot of people where they see evolution. I think it also might be a good idea to invite one of the leading academics from HEC or Oxford just to give a session on emerging trends and change, you know, what's going on in the academic.
Why do you think they'd be able to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm grateful for the quip, but I'm not going to go there.
I'd like to build on the idea of having Gareth and some other things that were said around the table. I think it would be great if we have someone like Gareth, who is a big name, that we put a note out to the membership and find out who else is doing work like you in the field and get them involved. Okay,
Just one thing,
sorry.
if you don't get Gareth, what is second choice?
Great question.
Yep. I can ask Gareth.
So, folks, I want to take you back. I'm going to be quite directed for the next few minutes, Lars, because I've got 7 minutes left. I'm going to take you back to our discussion yesterday afternoon, where you said such brilliant things about the care and feeding of ideas. We have a sense of a small number of ideas that are going to be carried out of the liberating space and into usual space, a perilous journey. There are villains out there who will attempt to grab those ideas and crush them, evaporate them. It's true, as Lois nods. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about how to care for those particular ideas? How to nurture and grow? Somebody, please forgive me, I can't remember who it was, but I heard somebody use the garden metaphor for tending to an idea.
We do. We thought it would be important to have a little greenhouse to sort of nurture our ideas, and you can sit and have coffee table mentally in the greenhouse, and we could maybe do that virtually.
What else? Thank you. That's beautiful, a greenhouse. I love that image of a greenhouse for ideas.
It's in a volunteer community, what I've seen is the people who put in the work, who take an idea and run with it, that gives it energy, and it does evolve, and it's rare that it becomes snuffed out later on, because this is not, the values of the TCL community are not reductionist values by nature, but because it's a volunteer community, some ideas die because they're not being carried. People are not putting in the energy, the time, and the work.
And so what helps is the distribution across many shoulders, not everything on very few shoulders. And I think we're getting there with this idea of ambassadors. I think that's really good.
I also think the point is very important, having a point person. So it's fine for us to all say, oh yeah, we'd like to be involved in the Paris conference, but we need a coordinator for everything, whether it's a book project or the webinars or the conference. We need a coordinator. So we have Julie for the Paris conference, but there are other things that people would like to do. Like Greenhouse for Ideas. Maybe Barrett would say, oh yeah, I would like to be the point person for that. And we can get help, but it's like we need a point person. We spend a lot of time sitting around talking.
Are you the coordinator for the...
I'm happy to do that. Okay. And I would like somebody else to...
Yes, we'll help you.
Yeah.
I'll volunteer.
So...
I'm volunteering for everything.
That's great.
That's great, Lisa.
Can we have an ambassadors coordinator? Looking at...
Mason wants to do it. Look at his face. He's like, yes, I'll do it.
Yeah,
Look at you.
Mason, will you be the ambassadors coordinator?
I've been volunteered, I'll take it up.
Okay.
You volunteered. Your face was like, I could do that. I heard
Can you
that.
pass this to Elizabeth, please, since we're not allowed to talk?
What did you want to do? You want to do something, I'm sure.
I would very much like to be part of the team who plans the Paris conference, and I would like to, if you like, to contact Gareth and talk with him about what we have been doing, if you like.
After you talked with Julie.
Of course.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
One more suggestion with the Paris conference. So this idea of the Lego blocks. So if the Paris conference could be almost the experimentation of what are exactly those blocks, so that after the Paris conference you can kind of say, actually, now somebody else can be responsible for this bit. And this is the type of decision making that you've got,
The two conferences are slightly
etc.
different because we have spread in Oxford and we don't have spread in...
Yeah, good
We have
point.
different facilities
but
here
we
that
could break
have in
them
Paris.
down.
Okay.
Paris is a bit more basic. It's
a bit more French, yeah?
This is,
Sorry,
no,
I mean it in a good way.
This is technologically perfect here. You don't have that in Paris.
Please forgive me, folks, I got to hold the reins, yes?
But good idea to have, components for each conference. They're different, but if we understand them, it makes it easier to spread them out.
So folks, in our formal session, and if it is your choice to continue the conversation, we can certainly do that. But I have an obligation to live up to my commitments, and one of my commitments is that we would finish at 10 minutes to 12. And conversations must be landed. Yes, Hussein?
I want to be the CCC 6, if you allow.
Ambassador.
Wonderful. I'm going to gather all the, especially the telephone number. I like what I was talking of all the ambassadors.
Okay. Offline.
Yes, logistics can, from here on in, logistics can be handled offline. For the next 2 minutes, I'm curious about how the end of this conversation. Yes, Eamon.
Picking up on Monica's point, I think we need to agree the parameters for what if Gareth is not available. So I think we've all agreed there's
definitely.
whatever.
Definitely.
So does it automatically go to Mary Crossing, or do we?
It can't go to Mary
You know,
Crossing, she's not
It's not
available.
available.
Does it go to? You
So,
know,
forgive me, but at this point, that's.
People who are
I
interested
just heard
offline.
you. I just heard you commit to follow through with several people to come up with a plan B. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Emin. That was very kind of you.
Great.
Be careful.
So we now have 1 minute. We have a minute and a half. Cecile, the floor is yours.
Oh my God, you did not.
I didn't warn you. That's because I didn't know where we would be in 2 minutes to go.
Okay. I'll take over from what daughter was saying, that she thought that this was the lowest attendance in a while. I joined in 2010 and I think we were 12 in the room, so we're 18 or 20 here, so we're more. So we have been less. I remember in Paris, and this session I was referring to yesterday, where we were who are we and what do we want? We were 12, I think, something like that. So we're not that low number. I think I have the statistics, but Oxford has been around 34. We were 30, so it's not that low. And to me, it's not going down; it's going up. So the energy I get from this session, maybe we're low in number, but they're high energy in creating something.
Yeah.
Much more than
True.
before.
And also, I think you. Oh, sorry, but you mustn't kind of always make kind of negative connotations, because we're missing a few people because of Banff.
Yes.
We're missing a few people I know from my cohort who just couldn't make it. So it's you know, it's not all
Imagine
gloom and doom,
Paris.
right?
It's going to be awesome.
Sorry, what is Banff?
Circumstantial. So no,
Long
just,
story.
just
Yeah.
to,
But I'm going to be in Banff in a week. If you'd like me to just touch, my foot somewhere so that.
CCC was here.
So I am very happy with everything that happened. And I am feeling this ownership I was looking for, or we were looking for, because it's not me on my own. And feeling really great, because for the matter, I'm speaking about me, one of my issue was about succession, what we call in corporation succession planning. And given I have to hand over or to finish my term.
That's the next session we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So can we go for coffee?
So I'm going to say one last thing, and wrapping it up. First of all, thank you once again for inviting me to spend this time with you. Thank you for welcoming me. I've been doing this a long, long time, and while I have felt welcome in other places, I can say that I've never felt more welcome. Lisa, thank you for conspiring to make this happen, and to Phil and Julie for jumping on and inviting me today. Thanks to everyone for being so collaborative in preparing for this session and diving in and joining the kitchen table conversation today. I certainly have had a wonderful, fulfilling conversation. I hope it's been a bit useful for you as well.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you.